guys, we're going to talk about factoring today. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, now, don't freak out on me. Okay, the first thing that we're going to learn is factoring with a GCF. What does that mean, Coach Sapp? GCF means the greatest common factor. G, greatest common factor. Greatest common factor. Okay, so let's review something real quick. We talked about how to multiply monomials together, right? So example number 1, we would use the distributive property. We would multiply the 2x to the 3x and then the 2x to the 2. Right? 2 times 3 is 6. X to the first times x to the first is x squared. And we distribute to the 2 also. So 2x times positive 2 is a positive 4x. There we are. Same thing with number 2. Distribute to both terms. 3 times 4 is 12. X squared, x to the first, add your exponents, we get x to the third. Y to the first, we get y squared. Now we distribute here, so we get a negative 3x squared y. Last one, we'd be distributing the 5a to, once again, every term in that second parentheses. 5 times 2 is 10. A times a squared is a cubed. Add your exponents. 5a times negative 4 is a negative 20. A times a is a squared. And then last one we got positive 50a. Now, quick review, right? All that is distributing. What are factors? Factors are numbers or parts that when multiplied together form a product or the product. And then we have what we call prime factors. And those are polynomials that cannot be factored further. Just like prime numbers, you cannot break those down. 7's a prime number. I'm sorry, guys. Duh, Coach Sapp. Okay, so numbers are parts that when multiplied together form a product. Those are factors. And then a prime factor is a polynomial that cannot be factored any further. Sorry, I'll give you a second to write that down. 1001, 1002. All right, Coach Sapp, let's move on. Thank you. All right, when factoring out a GCF. Okay, so coefficients, then variables. So what I mean by that is how to determine my GCF, which again, GCF equals the greatest common factor. Greatest common factor. So the coefficients, then the variables. So what I mean by that is first determine a GCF for your coefficients. And again, coefficients are the numbers in front of my variables. So like my examples up here, 5 is a coefficient, 2 is a coefficient. 3 is a coefficient, 4 is a coefficient. So what I'd be looking for is I'd be looking for the GCF, the greatest factor that both of those have in common. Step number 1, first determine a GCF for your coefficients, or the numbers. Step number 2 is to focus on the variables. And take it one at a time, guys. So step number 1, look at your numbers, just like I taught you on how to multiply. Multiply number times number. If you're looking to factor out the greatest factor between your numbers. And then go ahead and go on to your variables and take them one at a time. You take a variable out only if it is common, meaning the same, between all of your terms. And if that's the case, you take out the smallest exponent. Okay, so I'm taking out a variable only if it's common between all of my terms, and the variable that I'm taking out is going to be the variable, and it's going to have the smallest exponent in my polynomial. Distribute means to, back up here, distribute meant to multiply, always. Well, the GCF, factoring, means to the exact opposite of that, which is to divide. Have I blown your mind yet? No? Okay, well, let's look at some examples. So your assignment looks like this. It's got a bunch of example problems. What we're going to look at is we're going to look at the GCF from these polynomials. So what I'm looking at, guys, is I'm trying to find, once again, going back to my notes, I'm trying to find the greatest common factor between these two terms. And the first thing that you're going to look at, I told you, is the numbers first. First thing I'm going to look at is my numbers. So I'm going to try to find the greatest factor between 4 and 10. So what is the biggest number that's divisible, that's divided into 4, and also can be divided into 10? 4 can be divided by 2, and 10 can be divided by 2. So the GCF out of 4 and 10 is 2. Now, it's not 4 because 10 is not divisible by 4. It's not even. So 2 is my GCF. Now look at your variables. Your variable has to be constant in all terms. Well, there is no x here. There is no variable. So you cannot factor out a variable. So the only thing I can factor out is a 2. So again, GCF means that we are dividing. So if I factor out a 2, I'm taking 4x and I'm dividing by 2, you're left with 2x. If you have a positive 10 and you divided it by 2, if you took out a multiple of 2 out of the 10, you're left with a positive 5. Going down to number 3, look at my difference here. I've got x squared and I've got an x. So you've got the same variable in both of these. So we know right now that I'm going to be able to factor out an x. I'm also going to be able to factor out a number because there is a number in common in both 9 and 81. That is 9. Both of those are divisible by 9. So the GCF is not only 9, but 9x to the first power. And like I said, you're always going to take the least exponent. This is x to the first. Well, you can only take an x to the first out of x to the first. There's only one x to take out. And again, GCF means we are dividing. So we're dividing right now by 9x. 9 divided by 9 is 1. Do I have to write that? Absolutely not, but you could if you wanted to. X squared divided by x is x to the first power. Again, subtract your exponents. So you got x right there. Again, we're dividing by 9x. So 81 divided by 9 is a negative 9. X to the first divided by x to the first. Subtract your exponents. 1 minus 1 is 0. So there are no more x's. Those cancel out. There's your answer. Let's hop down to number 7. Let's make it a little more tricky, Coach Sapp. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Number 7, again, you're looking at your numbers first. So what is my greatest factor between 12, 6, and 8? We know it can't be 6 because 8 is not divisible by 6. We know it can't be 3 because 8 is not divisible by 3. We know it can't be 4 because 6 is not divisible by 4. So those are all even, so they're all divisible by 2. So the GCF is 2. Now we look at our variables. I've got x to the 4th, x cubed, x squared. So they all have an x in it. So you know you're going to factor out an x and take the smallest exponent. So the smallest exponent is right here with the 2. So we're factoring out, or we're dividing out, 2x squared out of each of those terms. So this is divided by 2x squared. This is divided by 2x squared, and this is divided by 2x squared. So going back to like we learned last week, we're going to divide numbers by numbers, so 12 divided by 2. Now we're looking to divide our exponents, divide our variables, which means to subtract our exponents. X to the 4th divided by x squared, so 4 minus 2 is 2. We know that it stays in the numerator because the 4 is the greater number. I've got 6 divided by 2, that's a positive 3. X to the third divided by x squared is going to give me x. 3 minus 2 is 1. I could write 1 right there, so be it. Last but not least, I've got a negative 8 divided by 2 is a negative 4. X squared divided by x squared, 2 minus 2 is, cancels out. There's your answer. Let's do number 9. Looks a little bit tricky. Number 9, again, same process. Look for your numbers first. So 14 is divisible by 7. 21 is divisible by 7. So my GCF is going to have a 7. Now look at your variables. I've got a squared and an a to the first. I know that I can factor out an a. And I'm going to take the smallest exponent. Well, the smallest exponent out of 2 and 1 is 1, right? So I can only take out an a to the first. If you look at your b's, you've got b squared and b squared. I can take out a b squared. So again, we are dividing by 7ab squared. So here you've got 14 divided by 7, that's 2. You've got a squared divided by a. Subtract your exponents, we get a to the first power. Those cancel out. Here we've got 21 divided by 7, that is positive 3. A divided by a cancels out. B squared divided by b squared cancels out. There's your answer. Let's do one more like that, Coach Sapp. Okay. Alright, number 12. So again, we're looking at the numbers first. So the greatest common factor between 28 and 21 is 7. Now go to your variables. X cubed, x squared. So we know we have an x. We can take an x out. And take the smallest exponent, which is 2. Y and a y. So I can take a y out. And I take the smallest exponent, which is 3. So we're dividing this by 7x squared y to the third. We're dividing this by 7x squared y to the third. Let's do it. 28 divided by 7 is 4. X to the third, x squared, 3 minus 2 is 1. Bigger numbers on top, x stays on top. 5 to y to the fifth, divided by y to the third, 5 minus 3 is 2. Bigger numbers on top, so the y squared stays on top. Going to my next term, I've got 21 divided by 7, that's positive 3. These x's cancel, these y's cancel. That was easy. That's it.